Hello, welcome to Leadership Live with Anton Gunn. And today we're having a conversation that I would have with CEOs. And when I say CEOs, I am sharing the 7 things that every chief executive should know, but many times they might forget. This is a relevant conversation for all of us to understand what CEOs need to be thinking about, what they need to be doing, and what they should be doing, especially if you report to a CEO. Now, I've had the privilege of understanding one important thing. Being the CEO can be one of the most important and impactful jobs that you could ever have, one of the most powerful jobs that you could ever have. But it also can be the loneliest. And when I say loneliest, let me just help you to understand that as a keynote speaker and advisor, I've worked with CEOs at Fortune 500 companies. I've worked with CEOs at small businesses. I've reported to a CEO. I've worked with chief executives in healthcare organizations and small businesses and even in the nonprofit sector. And yes, I also have been in the CEO chair myself. So what I'm about to share with you is based on 30 years of experience, 30 years of talking to executives, with executives about the challenges that these executives deal with every single day. And so what I'm doing right now is giving you a little sense of transparency of what every CEO needs to know, what they should know, but many times forget about. And I'm going to do my best to make sure that you understand these things so that you can remind them at the appropriate times. So these are 7 things. If you got a pen or a pad, you can write them down. If you're not in a position to write them down, don't worry about it. This video will live in perpetuity and I won't take it down. It'll be here for you to reference back to. So let's jump right in. The 7 things that every CEO should know. Number 1, culture starts with you. And also, toxicity starts with you. See, the point of this is that every executive might hear about toxic culture in their organization, and they might blame it on a middle manager or a bad division or a bad department that they can't ever keep good staff. But it is not that division. It's not that department. It's not even that manager. That the toxic culture starts with you as the CEO. See, you permit what you promote. And so if you don't permit toxic culture, there will be no toxic culture for anybody to talk about. So that really means that you have to understand that everything rises and falls on your leadership. I've never seen an organization have a great culture and not have a great CEO. I've never seen an organization that has a toxic culture not have those same toxic behaviors happening in the C-suite. And that's in the direct control of the CEO. So if you want to improve your culture, you want to re-engage your workforce, you want to get people excited about the mission and the margin, well, then it all starts with your behavior. That culture starts with you. You permit what you promote. And it also is another phrase that I like to use all the time. You have to inspect what you expect. So if you expect a world-class workplace culture, my question for you, are you inspecting what you expect? And what I find more times than not, there will be some CEOs that say, I don't have time to do all of this culture stuff. That's the reason why I hired HR. That's the reason why we have a chief HR officer or a chief people officer or a chief people and culture officer. They give them all kinds of great titles, but they don't understand that this is not HR's job. This is your job as a CEO, as the chief executive of the organization. The culture starts with you, whether it be great world-class culture or whether it's toxic and withered culture. It is all up to you. That's point number one. Now, point number two goes right back to this HR framework. And here's point number two that every CEO needs to know, every chief executive needs to know, is that employees don't trust HR. And you know why employees don't trust HR? Is because you don't trust HR. See, you put HR in a position to say that they are totally responsible for the culture, that is all on their shoulders, but you don't give them the tools. You don't give them the information. You don't give them the resources to build a kind of human capital apparatus that creates an environment of trust and respect. See, you have disempowered your chief HR officer. I'm telling you, I've seen it firsthand. I've talked to CEOs and I know what they say about their chief human resource officer behind their back, especially if that human resource officer is a champion of diversity, or especially if they're a person that fits a definition of diversity. I've seen CEOs be dismissive, disrespectful, and outright just discriminatory against a chief HR person. So they don't show those chief HR officers the level of trust and respect and empowerment that they deserve. So why would you expect the employees to do something that you're not willing to do? That if you've disempowered them and not put them in a strategic position to build the human capital workforce of the future, but instead you got them being reactionary or just compliance focused, then you are undermining your own organization, because the employees don't trust HR. And they don't trust HR is because you don't trust HR. And as a chief executive, you should be building a human capital function that has the highest level of respect, the highest level of engagement, the ability to participate in conversations at a senior level, to build a kind of culture where your employees trust HR because HR is empowered to do something about the bad actors in the organization, the people who are compromising your culture. But the reason why employees don't trust HR because they look at HR as an entity that only has the back of the company and doesn't have the back of the employees. That if people report bad behavior or they're bad actors in the organization, and this employee continues to stay there in that role, or worse still, they get moved around to other departments. You don't get rid of the person who is being least accountable to the employees that they frontline supervise. That's how people stop trusting HR. So number two, I want you to understand that employees don't trust HR because you don't trust them enough to give them the tools, the information, and the resources to be a strategic partner in the human capital function, but instead, they're a disempowered, reactionary compliance office. That's the second thing you need to know, is employees don't trust HR because you don't. Then number three, this is really important for you to understand as a CEO, as a chief executive, is that failed change management will cost you. Failed change management will cost you. And so when I say change management, you got to think about in this way. You might have a strategy as a business, a strategy as a company, that your goal is to do X, Y, and Z over the next 5 years. But if that X, Y, and Z strategy requires a level of change in how people operate and what they do, the tools they have, the resources they have, how they structure each team to get the work done, if you don't manage that change process appropriately, it will sink your strategy. I've seen it time and time again where organizations go through so much new strategy that the employees call it the flavor of the month, that they know that this is short-lived. They know that it's going to change 12 months from now or even 6 months from now. So they don't invest. So guess what happens when they don't invest? Whatever change you said you was going to do is never going to stick. It doesn't stick. So you need to understand the role that you play in change management. It first starts with communication. And when I say communication, let me tell you what I tell every CEO. It doesn't matter about the what, the when, or the how. What employees need to hear from you as a CEO is the why. You have to communicate the why. Why are we going in this direction? Why are we employing this strategy? Why are we doing this even though things look to be great? Why are we doing this when things look bad? You have to explain why. That's your job as a chief executive officer, is to get crystal clear and crystal communicative about the why. You got to over communicate. And over communicate doesn't mean just sending a bunch of emails, putting it in a PowerPoint deck, or putting it in a memo that gets sent around. You need to understand that people receive information in multiple ways: verbally, written, visually. You might have to tell some stories. You might have to be in person to communicate the why around why we're changing. Then people will buy into the what. Then they will buy into the how. Then they will buy into the when. And they will buy into the where. But they won't buy into any of them until you communicate the why. That's the third thing you need to understand. Failed change management will sink your strategy. Now, number 4, this is the thing that you need to understand, that revenge quitting is real. Revenge quitting. That's a term that you may not know right now, but you might know it as in, what unexpected turnover did we have today? Unexpected turnover we had this week. What is revenge quitting? Is when you have a culture that is so toxic, so bad, so bitter, so nasty, that employees will quit without giving you notice. They don't give you 2-week notice. They don't give you 3-week notice. They don't give you a month's notice. They quit immediately. They might even come in on a Monday of a big project and announce that they're quitting today. That my last day is 5 o'clock. Today at 5 o'clock. Now for Gen Zers, they are doing this more frequently than anybody else. That revenge quitting for them is that they see something that's wrong and unfair and toxic. There's mistreatment going on in the culture. That somebody has said something wrong and nobody's trying to make it right. They will revenge quit. Quit abruptly without any notice whatsoever. This is a real thing. So you as a leader needs to understand, what am I doing to prevent revenge quitting? How am I treating people on a daily basis so they don't quit? Because this is a real thing. It is really real out here in these streets for Gen Zers who don't want to work in a bad environment that's disrespectful, that is distrustful, that don't treat people the right way. They are revenge quitting. That's the 4th thing you need to understand. It's real. There is a 5th thing you need to understand, that in your workforce today, you have a divide over DEI. There is a divide over DEI, and you can't ignore it. Now, what I mean, you can't ignore it, your employees bought into the culture of your organization. So if you were an organization that before 2019 was not explicit about an inclusionary framework of your values, and then George Floyd died or the pandemic happened and you all of a sudden started to focus your culture around inclusion and diversity and equity and justice and accessibility, if those are terms that you use in your mission statement, your CEO report, you put it in your annual report, you talked about it, you made videos about it, if you did all of those things over the last 5 years, you've attracted and retained a workforce that believes in those values. They want to be valued. They want to be respected. They want to be included. They want accessibility and accommodation the way they should. They want to be seen and heard. But now, all of a sudden, because of political pressure, you have made a decision to shift away from those things. Well, you're creating a divide in your organization because there are plenty of people who believe in that. And the people who didn't believe it, they probably left already. So now that you're backing away and trying to ignore the issues around diversity, around race, around gender, all of these things in the workplace, you are sinking your culture in real time. You cannot avoid the DEI divide. You can't ignore it. I mean, you see what's going on with Target and several other companies that have tried to hide their hands around this stuff. No, it doesn't work. But you see the companies who leaned into diversity, Costco, Apple, a few others, those companies are going to thrive. So you have to be an executive who doesn't ignore the DEI divide. And there's a lot of ways that I can show you how to do that in a presentation, in a training, a retreat. I'd be happy to show you. But I'm not going to spend this whole video explaining it to you. But I want you to understand, number 5, the 5th thing that every CEO needs to know, that there is a real divide over DEI, and you can't ignore it. You can't ignore it. This brings me to point number 6, that your employees are resisting change mainly because of a few simple reasons. Number 1, they weren't involved in the change management process. Their ideas weren't included. They didn't get a chance to say their piece about it. So when employees don't feel safe, when they don't feel heard, when they don't feel respected, they won't accept change. They will resist it. And it's just going to make it harder than necessary. And you don't want that. You don't need that. You want change to work. So respect your employees, include them, listen to them, make sure that they're safe as you go through the change management process. Now, this brings me to number 7. This is very clear and simple, that your legacy as a chief executive is being written right now. That what you're doing today or what you're not doing today is how you will be remembered for your time as a leader in that organization. The legacy isn't something that happens, 15 years after you left. Your legacy is being set today. So how you choose to deal with the culture, how do you choose to deal with the uncertainty? How do you choose to deal with all of the myriad of issues that are affecting your organization? How you respond to them is cementing your legacy today. People will remember these moments in time, in history, in the organization. And there's some leaders who don't understand that their legacy is being written today, and then they wait until they get to the last year before retirement, after they've announced that they're getting ready to retire, is when they start trying to work on their legacy. When that legacy was cemented 5 years ago about how you responded in the pandemic, how you responded to all of this uncertainty in the market, how you responded to the DEI, how you responded when the company went through a merger and acquisition. All of those things are being written today. And so your culture, your legacy about how you set the culture or manage the culture is being written today. So I want you to know that whether it's number 1, that change starts with you, employees not trusting HR, your failed change management strategy that is, defeating your change process. It's going to sink your overall strategy. Whether it's you understanding that employees are revenge quitting, that DEI is a divide in an organization that you can't ignore, or that, employees are going to resist changes that they're not a part of. It doesn't matter which one of these you focus on. I want you to know that all of these things can be problematic, but there is a solution. If you want to turn things around, if you want to set your organization on a path, whether it's all of these things are going wrong, or maybe just one or two of them, and you need some help doing it, I would be happy to share more details about these 7 things and what you can do right now to bring solution to your organization's challenges. That is the mantra, the mission, and the message that I deliver as a keynote speaker, retreat facilitator, strategic advisor, that it all starts with you and you can turn things around, but you have to want to. And the first step of wanting to is deciding what you will believe. Before you decide what you can believe, you got to understand what you know and what you don't know, because you can't fix what's wrong until you know what's wrong. And I've shared today the 7 things that every executive should know. Every chief executive should know that culture starts with them, that employees don't trust HR, that your failed change management strategy will eat your overall business strategy, that revenge quitting is real, that you have a divide over DEI that you can't ignore, and that employees will always resist change that they're not a part of. And lastly, your legacy is being written today. So my question for you, do you want to stay stuck where you are, or do you want to turn things around? I'm here to help, here to add value. And that's why I do Leadership Live every Wednesday. So if this resonated with you, I want you to share it with someone. Tag a minute. Allow them to learn the 7 things that every executive should know so that they can make sure these things are happening the right way in their organization. Until next time, you all have a fantastic day, and I will see you at the next Leadership Live. Take care.